comprehensive approach remain in fact very topical today. We have to continue to confront piracy in addition to other forms of maritime crime, and we must help Kenya and other maritime nations in Africa to strengthen maritime security. In this context, and during the conference, the EU has welcomed the recent establishment of the Coast Guard Service in Kenya and has announced a further financial package to support the establishment of this new force, which will reinforce the maritime security of the country. As you know, maritime security is an enabler and a critical precondition for the development of a blue economy. You cannot have security without development without security. And this is true when it comes to the maritime domain. As long as the Gulf of Aden continues to be plagued by piracy and other forms of maritime crime, smuggling of migrants, trafficking in arms, environmental dumping, illegal fishing, the port of Mombasa will be unable to reach its full potential. As a result, Kenya will suffer in terms of less investment, fewer jobs, and that's not what the blue economy is looking at. We want to have this job creation, we want to have more investment in the maritime sector, and therefore we need maritime security and a strategy to approach it. The EU comprehensive approach has achieved a lot. Through EU NEP4, we've helped reduce occurrences of piracy to almost zero. Also significant is the EU investment in socio-economic developments in Somalia and on the coast of Somalia that help stabilize the country and offer alternatives to the jobless youth. This goes hand in hand with our economic and trade policy and investment in the port of Mombasa and on the Kenyan coast, where we also have the willingness as EU to be a partner of choice of Kenya and East Africa in the development of the maritime sector. I must also mention the capacity building project that the EU finances. Grimario, of course, Maze, Gogin are helping littoral states to improve maritime domain awareness, and these projects promote cooperation, coordination, interoperability, and information sharing from the Indian Ocean to the Gulf of Guinea. I think we are a bit pressed by time, so I'll cut short because I think I've said the most important thing. I would then also say that we want to continue working in this direction and invest in this direction, both politically and financially. So the EU will continue being present in this field and will increase its presence as the blue economy concept takes more importance in Kenya and in the region. Now, before I start introducing the panelists, I would like each panelist to be brief and to the point, indeed, so that we can also have time for questions at the end of the two sessions. I think what we'll do is we'll have two sessions in a row, and then we'll take 15-20 minutes, I guess, if time allows, to take questions from the audience. I thank you for being here and for participating to this side event, which I think is extremely important for Kenya, for the blue economy concept, and for the whole of Africa. Thanks a lot. So actually, I should continue speaking, but sitting now. So, dear friends, I think we're going to start with the first panel, which is a discussion that should give us a global view of challenges and strategies for more secure seas. And I've got the pleasure to ask Glenn Forbes, who is a principal at Oceanus Life in the United Kingdom, to start speaking about ways to strengthen maritime safety and develop the blue economy.
Good morning and thank you. Very glad to be here. I have the dubious honour of being the one that has to kick off and try and keep to the timing, which is never easy. But what I will say that with maritime security and the blue economy, I'm talking to the the converted. I'm preaching to everybody who's already part of the choir who believes in what is going on. So I would like to address those who still have some misgivings about the transformational issues that are at stake in the blue economy. After a few days now of listening to talks and the discussions in support of the blue economy initiatives, the outlining of the risks, the challenges, and the opportunities that must be highlighted, that maritime security does not work. I know some people are thinking, well, why would you say that? And I will get to that point. So, developing the blue economy requires more than just the promises of action, more than just innovation, more than improved capacity building and cooperative agreements. It requires a higher strategic understanding of the rule of law, freedom of navigation, improved infrastructure such as ports and harbours, and the coastal protection. But then you look at the sovereignty of the sea, protection of underwater pipes, cables, offshore platforms, living systems, environmental health, climate change, overfishing, pollution, and many more, as well as piracy and all the illicit crimes that happen at sea. Maritime security does not work if the maritime domain awareness is not at the very forefront of the thinking in delivering the blue economy initiatives. Basically, it's overcoming sea blindness, which you've already heard today and over the last few days. To many people, maritime security is closely linked to piracy at sea. However, it is a multifaceted set of variables that includes, but is not limited to, situational awareness, surveillance, sharing of information, risk management, protection, both hard and soft, of critical infrastructure, along with improved research, scientific research, innovation, education and training. And furthermore, the ability to respond to crises is a key component of domain awareness. It cannot be done in isolation. And by this I mean that maritime threats are seldom binary. They are often interrelated and including reaching into the land domain. Whichever way you look at it, to develop maritime, you're also going to have to make sure that the land is developing in tune with that as well. Domain awareness is only achieved through transparency and not just the willingness to share, but the onus to share information through established protocols, best practice procedures developed across inter-organisation participation and regional partnerships, which we've heard again today. It goes beyond that. It depends on the capacity of the national authorities to project the collaboration and cooperation across the many borders for mutual assurances that underpin the blue economy. But to underscore the importance of domain awareness to enhance maritime security, governments must ensure not only the traditional measures that we see to date, but also law enforcement, judiciary and prosecution measures are enacted to provide a legal finish where illicit flows are identified and those individuals responsible are brought to account. The blue economy, although ambitious, it is an achievable venture, but one that necessitates a change in mindset. It requires a regional response and finally, as I said before, a comprehensive and holistic approach. The new regime, the new engine of economic growth is the blue economy, is the new frontier for African Renaissance. If you don't support this sufficiently, you'll be stuck in repeating the same mistakes. What has to be done is to make sure that what you do is to develop the blue economy and therefore to see Africa rising. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Len. And so if you don't mind, we'll continue with all panelists and then so I'll invite now John Steed, who's a senior maritime crime advisor at UNODC Global Maritime Crime Program, to speak about maritime strategy and the challenges of maritime crime for the blue economy.
Thank you very much. Could somebody put my slides up for me? I'm an old man, so this morning when I printed my slides off, they're at such a small size I can't even read them. But I like to get close to the audience, so I'm going to come down here and talk, and so that I can actually see what on earth it is that I'm talking about. My name is John Steed. I'm from the UNODC's Global Maritime Crime Program. We started off in Somalia. We're now global, West Africa, the Caribbean, the Pacific, Southeast Asia, as maritime crimes have expanded. What I'm going to talk about this morning very quickly is the need for maritime strategy, a little bit about maritime crime, and a little bit about awareness. Okay, why do you actually need a maritime strategy is a good question. Everybody talks about strategy, but why do you actually need it? Well, most countries want to exert maritime power in some way. In some countries and some areas, it actually might be hang on. What's happening? Can you take me back to the beginning? We're going backwards. Anyway, most countries like to exert maritime power. What's maritime power about? For some countries, maritime power might be in a military sense. You may have conflict with your neighbours. You may want to protect an economic capacity. It may be that you have a very aggressive neighbour who's trying to expand. So you want to exert maritime power in that way. But maritime power is also, and its main sense is commercial. You want to protect your economic assets and protect them so that they're available for your use, for you to make money, for you to support your economy. So that's mainly what the strategy is about. So what are the components of a maritime strategy? There are many formats for a maritime strategy. Can you just keep still? Keep it there. Okay, there are many components for a maritime strategy, many examples. This is one that we've used in East Africa quite a lot. It's moving by itself. Okay. We have used a maritime strategy that has several elements to it. The first element, this is an example of one we've used in Somalia. The first element is about governance and organisation of how you run your maritime economy. I always think this is back to front. What you should have as your first element should be the maritime economy, the one that's last on the slide. Bring that to the front. Everything else is actually in support. So you start with governance, you then run into rule of law, and the legal elements of protecting your maritime space, followed by defence and security, remember, exerting maritime power, and then defence. The next element, something that's regularly forgotten by many people developing a maritime strategy, is about safety and security. Safety in your own waters. Security in your own waters, not just of your ports, not just of your offshore oil industry, of your fishing. The safety element is extremely important. And response and recovery is the next element. Imagine if you're a small East African country, you have really good fishing grounds, and a tanker runs onto the rocks and destroys your fishing industry because of oil. I'm an old man. We had a tanker run on the ground, run off the rocks off the Cornish coast in England nearly 40 years ago, called the Torrey Canyon. It destroyed our oyster industry. It destroyed our lobster industry, not just for a period of time, but for generations. We still haven't recovered our oyster fishing industry because of an oil spill. We had no capability to respond to that oil spill. So for me, the response and disaster recovery is a key element of your strategy. As an example of what we did in the region, we set up a strategy for Somalia. Somalia had no maritime strategy, so with partners, we brought together all of the experts in the world who were capable of developing a maritime strategy, brought them all together, and developed a very good maritime strategy. But when you have a recovering state, the ability to implement that maritime strategy was very difficult. So we allocated each of the pillars of the maritime strategy to an international organization to be the father of that pillar, and to bring together all of the partners involved and lead that pillar on behalf of the Somali people. And that's worked really well. And we've used that also to develop capacity building for a father figure to bring together and to find donors who will support capacity building in each of those areas. It hasn't gone perfectly. In fact, some of it has gone far from perfectly. There tends to be an over-concentration on the security aspect because of piracy, and not so much emphasis on some of the other elements that are equally important, and particularly the economic aspect. But this conference and getting people here over the last 3 days has really focused attention on the blue economy. And if you go away with one thought in your mind, I always like to remember Bill Clinton's election campaign. Bill Clinton had a campaign leader, and when the campaign was going particularly badly, they were looking at something to hang on to and to push Clinton's campaign forward. And they came up with a strapline, and the strapline was, "It's about the economy, stupid." Think about that in terms of your maritime strategy. It's about the economy. Everything else is in support. One of the other aspects that we've learned in the last 2 or 3 years is about the need for coordination and cooperation. Coordination internally between government departments. Many government departments think they own maritime security, and it's all about security. And yet, if you look at the strategy, bringing all of the other government departments who have a responsibility in the maritime arena and giving them a voice, and making sure that your response and your strategy is fully comprehensive, all informed. That's not just at the national level. You need to do that at the regional level as well. You don't operate your maritime economy in isolation. You operate it in cooperation with your neighbours. There's always an element of competition, but you are much stronger if you work together within a region. And here in this region, we have a regional capacity building working group where all the countries of the region come together and work together. I want to talk a little bit before I finish on maritime crime. Maritime crime is an $870 billion business. Note I say business because crime is a business and it's expanding. And in the maritime field, where almost all international trade goes by sea, it's something that's attracting the very big criminal enterprises. And therefore, the maritime security aspect is a key enabler for your blue economy. And fighting crime at sea is something that you need to give real attention to. Look at the range of crimes. It's not just piracy, and it's not just the trafficking of drugs. There's white-collar crime in your ports. There's economic crimes. There is a whole range of maritime crimes that sometimes tend to get ignored. The UN Office for Drugs and Crime has a maritime crime program. It's a key pillar of UNODC's work, which is why we're focusing on it here today. My final piece is about awareness. We've talked about regional cooperation, we've talked about national cooperation. The departments in your government can't cooperate unless they know what is going on in their specific area. And therefore it's about sharing information, it's about an awareness of what's happening in your territorial waters, what's happening within your EZ. Not just for fishing, but for the criminal aspects, for the environmental aspects. Sharing that information enables you and gives you power. Equally, regional cooperation and regional sharing of information is also important. Countries don't always want to cooperate, but as I said just now, cooperating together makes you stronger. And therefore, a regional picture of what's happening in your regional seas is vitally important. And sharing that information with your neighbour and with some of the organisations that can help you fight not just crime, but make you more efficient in the way you operate your maritime space. I think I've overrun, so I'll stop there.
Thanks a lot, John. Now I'll invite our next panelist, Cyril Serge Atonfak-Guémot, who's a maritime security expert of the Cameroonian Navy, to speak about the challenges of developing a secure blue economy in the Gulf of Guinea.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to be here, and I say thanks to the Kenyan government, thanks to Krimario and Gogin, who have invited Cameroon to participate to this event. Just waiting for a few seconds for slides. Okay. I was supposed to talk about the challenge of developing a secure blue economy in the Gulf of Guinea. And my plan will have 3 points. The first point is the overview of the Gulf of Guinea. The second is the major challenge of securing the blue economy in the Gulf of Guinea. And the third one is the emergency of full implementation of the Yaoundé architecture of maritime security and safety in the Gulf of Guinea. But which Gulf of Guinea is concerned with our event is the Gulf of Guinea made by ECAS and ECOWAS. And if you take it like this, it will be not a geographic Gulf of Guinea, but a political Gulf of Guinea with 2 regional economical communities that made 570 million inhabitants, 17 coastal states, 2 islands, 6,000 kilometers of coastal line, and 4 official languages, French, English, Portuguese, and Spanish. That makes the zone very difficult in terms of communication. But it's a space which is very strategic for the maritime trade because we are producing there 24 million barrels of oil reserve, something like 5% of world reserve, 6,100 tons of fish per year, and it is a vital maritime highway of world trade. We also have important reserve of tropical wood, gas, oil, uranium, and so on. But the last and not the least, 1.2 million hectares of mangrove. It's a kind of small Amazonia, so it's also vital for environment. And the challenge there, all challenges you can face around the world in maritime space, you have them in the Gulf of Guinea in terms of proliferation, pollution, piracy, accident, IUU fishing, laundering, narco-trafficking, why not terrorism, and human trafficking and smuggling. But the state of this zone have tried through 2 resolutions of the United States to build a mechanism of exchange information and mutualization to work together to solve all or to face all that threat. But the question today is that how can we do to have a secure blue economy in the zone. For me, you have three conditions. The first one is the freedom of navigation. It's an obligation for all coastal states to ensure the freedom of navigation along its coastal zone, because no shipping, no shopping. I will come back on it. The second condition is the free movement of goods and persons. And the third condition with which we need the assistance of partners is the capacity building in terms of communication, in terms of logistics, in terms of legal, regulatory, and in terms of human resources. Here, the major challenge for the state parties of the Yaoundé architecture to ensure the maritime security and safety in the Gulf of Guinea was how to participate in terms of finance. And they have made a lot of progress, because since last year, the state parties, 25 states, 10 from Central Africa and 15 from West Africa, they decided to pay for the functioning of the architecture. This architecture is ECAS and ECOWAS architecture, with the Regional Center for Central Africa in Pointe-Noire, Congo, and the Regional Center for West Africa in Abidjan in Ivory Coast. But it's remain a great, and for me, a major problem. That major it remains a major problem, and it's the most important. That major problem is the emergency to adapt project, process, and funding to local reality, because the challenge we are facing today cannot be solved only by partners. They need to associate the coastal state, the local state, the state of the Gulf of Guinea to the decision how to proceed, how to funding, and how to manage the process. The globalization to which, and here I'm in conclusion, to which the Gulf of Guinea states are called upon to contribute is a vast market in which primitive capitalists serve above all the interests of state entities that are better prepared to competition. The development of and implementation of efficient maritime governance in the geostrategic space of the Gulf of Guinea is a great opportunity to generate a sustainable, safe blue economy that will certainly contribute to the growth of community and the reinvestment of all actors and parties. As a result, it seems very, very, very important and almost imperative for the partner state, international and non-international organizations to rehabilitate their policy of assistance to the rise of the regional architecture to better stick to the entity and the anthropology of the coastal community and the state of the Gulf of Guinea, whose expertise is beginning to be established on maritime issues that mortgage their development. The Gulf of Guinea, which covers two regional economic communities, cannot realize inculturation to appropriate or even the mechanism to the secure blue economy if it's open permanently to external partnership while defending big and nail the value of reference that underpin the age-old nature of its identity. We need to keep our identity even when accept aid and partnership. Progress has been made, a lot remains to be done. Partners in the overall capacity building of state party of the Gulf of Guinea maritime security process are welcome. The lessons of this opportunistic exchange in Nairobi will certainly help, even partially, to fill the gaps. No shipping means no shopping, and also no trade. And finally, no blue economy. With the secure blue economy, the future is bright. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for this briefing on the development of the Gulf of Guinea. Now, I'd like to invite Marianne Perrondoise, who's a researcher at the Institute for Strategic Research at the Military School of Paris, and also strategic advisor to the program EU Primaria, to talk about EU initiatives to promote the maritime domain awareness and the blue economy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I will go straight to the point because we are losing time, I'm afraid, and I have four former colleague, and I would enjoy to let them the possibility to develop their point. I am at the interface of two panels, and my four other colleagues are going to develop the tools to promote maritime domain awareness and the blue economy in the more or less the EU perspective. And the fact is, may I have my first slide, please? Yeah, the fact is that, as you can see on the slide, EU have been very strongly involved in the maritime security of the African waters since a lot of time, both through naval engagement with Operation Atalanta, of course, and through capacity building and other supporting programs for the benefit of the local and the regional authority. And all of this initiative has a common goal, which is a strong accent on maritime situational awareness, on information sharing, on training, and of course on regional cooperation. And the EU goals in developing all of these initiatives, and notably the critical maritime route program, is very broad, because EU want to go beyond, I will say, the issue of piracy, and want to produce a comprehensive picture. You know that it is a very important concept for EU to have a comprehensive approach, both the civilian and the military dimension. And by implementing this program, the critical maritime route, EU want to expand the concept of maritime security in the whole region. And if we follow this conceptual approach, we will consider with EU that maritime security is largely dependent upon the acquisition of an effective maritime situational awareness based on exchange of information, based on exchange of data between the state, and my colleague Devna Trask will come back and will develop this point. And as such, the development of a regional MSA, development of capacity, is really at the core of this very numerous program of EU for not only the Indian Ocean with Primario, but for the Gulf of Guinea with the program COGING. And you will see that the program, the one is going to run until 2019 and the other to 2020. And I would like to, of course, add to this perspective and this critical maritime route program, the MASE program, who is focusing on maritime security and who is largely supported and funded by EU also. And all of these programs want effectively, by enforcing maritime security, wanted to enforcing the blue economy. May I have one second slide? Yeah, and another effective tool for EU is, of course, in 2014, the development of the EU maritime security strategy, when EU stress and identify a lot of maritime security challenge and underline the need to have a global and a secure maritime domain if we want to protect the growth and the prosperity of EU. And that is to say, reducing a lot of maritime trade, not only piracy, not only maritime illicit activities, but taking into account environmental threat. I'm speaking about climate change and the impact of climate change on the ocean, and of course on the blue economy. I will just conclude to let maybe my last okay, blue economy, of course, with a very, I will say, strong accent on the economic actor that represent EU, who is really relying on the trade and the sea lane of communication for its prosperity. This is to say that EU concern when it came to its blue economy is the same that many other countries in this region, and this will be my conclusion. Maritime security is needed, and maritime security helps the development of the blue economy, and a strong blue economy reflects, of course, a very good maritime governance. And this implies a coordinated approach to maritime security as a driver to growth and maritime economic activities, but also cooperation between international partners in the goal to contribute to a very stable and to a secure global maritime domain. Thank you for your attention, and I let the floor to my other colleague.
Thanks a lot. And with this presentation, I think we have had a full view of the challenges and strategies that are in place for more secure seas. Now we'll go, in fact, deeper into looking at the tools and collaborative approaches to enhance the maritime domain awareness. And I will immediately give the floor to Book Burns, who is a political advisor of the EU Naval Force Atalanta, and he's going to talk about the role of MSCHOA for the shipping industry.
Thank you, Bruno. And thanks for the opportunity to speak to you about the role of MSCHOA for shipping industry. While everyone here probably knows about EU Naval Force Atalanta, the counter-piracy operation of the EU, very few will perhaps know about MSCHOA, the Maritime Security Center Horn of Africa, that sits inside EU NAVFOR and is part and parcel of it. Even if it's a civilian, legal, separate identity, it is the heart of the operation. It is what informs us on where we need to be and what we need to do. When piracy spiraled out of control in 2008, 2009, and the military response was set up, some of my predecessors, and in fact one of them sits on the panel here, you heard him speak before, Glenn, when he was with EU NAVFOR, they had an honest conversation with the shipping industry and said, there's only one way of providing security and protection for you in an area the size that you see on the slide. That's by you agreeing to implement some of the specific instructions to your ships to transmit commercially sensitive information to us so that we can assess the risk, provide you with advice, and respond properly in case of an attack on your ship. To this day, about 5,000 ships report to MSCHOA every month, informing us of their routes, their speed, their self-protection measures, their cargo, their protocols. There's no legal requirement for them to do so. It is highly sensitive information, so the only reason they're willing to do this is that we provide them with timely information and a guaranteed response. If you report you're attacked, we will coordinate the response, as we are the conduit for a naval military response. Take away the response, take away the naval military presence in the area, and we become merely a depository for information, and ships will no longer voluntarily provide us with the information or self-protect. Next slide, please. Oh, you already have. Sorry, one back. Thank you. So the way we inform industry is through industry releasable threat assessments and industry releasable threat bulletins. The threat assessments are issued regularly about every 4 months to industry, to military partners, to diplomats in the region, to anyone who has a genuine interest in this. The IRTBs are threat bulletins that are direct responses to incidents. The one that you see up here is, I believe, the one for the KSL Sydney attack that happened just last month. Next slide, please. The IRTA and the IRTB are in addition to the Mercury tool, which is the core sharing information tool, MSCHOA's chat room, if you will, that connects military actors and governments. On this chat, the military actors report where they are and what their activities are for the day. I'll give you an example of how this helped us in practice. Just last month, as I mentioned, the KSL Sydney, a bulk carrier flagged in Hong Kong, was attacked by pirates, and we reported this on Mercury. At the time, the Seychelles had an aircraft in the sky. The Seychelles Maritime Reporting Center noticed the post and offered to send their aircraft to the region where the attack was taking place. In the meantime, MSCHOA, as the coordinating actor, was also in touch with the Air Coordination Element, ACE, in Bahrain to ensure deconfliction between EU NAVFOR, CMF, the Seychelles, and any other military aircraft in the region. Next slide, please. So there we go. How this works in practice is that a ship calls in an incident to the emergency room or 911. That's not us. That's, for most ships, the UK MTO. They report to us. and we coordinate with ships, task forces, send out a piracy alert, and coordinate with flag state and security actors. Embassy HOA itself plays a role of coordinator, as I mentioned. While we're available 24/7, 365 days a year, and have been for the last 10 years, plays a much broader role than just the call center receiving the call from a ship in distress. In case of an incident, as I mentioned, it coordinates the response of the various assets and task forces via the Mercury tool. It also communicates with the shipping industry to inform them of trends, threats, and protection measures. It works very closely with shipping industry in the development of the best management practices, of which the last version came out just last June, BMP 5. It also works with flag states to ensure ships have the necessary information and that protocols are in place in case of incidents. And lastly, it works with security companies to help them understand where the threats are and how to respond to it. Next slide, please. Here's an example of a non-piracy incident. An Iranian fishing vessel that was in distress back in June in a location in between Somalia and the Seychelles. The first call was to UK Maritime Transport Organization, as that is a call center. This was done by a different ship, the MVC Neptune. UK MTO then used Mercury to make all aware of the distress, resulting in MC HOA assessing who is available and coordinate the response. In this case, the response was by the French frigate Nivos, as it was the nearest to the incident. Nivos was not under MSC HOA or EU NAVFOR tasking and was, I believe, at the time under national tasking. MSC HOA thus provided the find and fix elements of the incident, then handing off the case to a vessel under national tasking. When it emerged, it was not a piracy incident. As you can read, if it's not too small, water and food was provided, but technical assistance did not help. A tow was offered but declined, but in the process, 350 kilograms of heroin were found, seized, and destroyed, constituting the finished elements that EU NAVFOR does not have a mandate for. Note that no EU NAVFOR asset was involved in this, but all of it was coordinated by the Maritime Security Centre Horn of Africa that sits within EU NAVFOR. So what are then the lessons learned? On the next slide, please. The tools designed for piracy are still fit for purpose, but should be transformed to also address other crimes. And I think Dave will talk about this later. Number two, you need information sharing to build up the maritime domain awareness. Having the bigger picture allows action to be taken against illicit activity. If you only find out through your national systems that a vessel is about to enter your territorial waters 10 miles off, you're too late. But if your neighbor informs you that the vessel is coming and you have 3 nautical miles to prepare the response and coordinate everything, then you have the time. 3, information exchange is a two-way street, not because information is power, but because there needs to be utility in sharing information, as there is a cost in doing so, whether it's time, effort, or otherwise. You cannot expect to receive information, but not give it. That's not how partnerships work. The only reason shipping industry gives us the information is because we A, provide a guaranteed response when they are in distress. B, we give them information that informs their decision making. And C, they know we handle their confidential and sensitive information with great care. And that brings me to the last point. You have to respond. Even after 10 years in the area, the partnership that we have with industry and with military partners is tested every day. The moment we fail to respond to 2 or 3 piracy incidents in a row, we're doomed and we are no longer relevant. You have to respond to incidents. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for this presentation, for underlining the role of this center and the importance of information sharing. That's also the topic of our next speaker, Dave Natras, who is a manager of the Primario Information Sharing Component and who's going to talk about Yoris, which is a tool to enhance information sharing in the wider Indian Ocean.
Thank you, Mr. Potty. Just 1 second while we activate the USB. I'm going to talk from here. I'm following John's lead, but I'm not as old as John. But my eyes are just as bad, so I prefer to run from the slides. Sorry, John. Yes, thank you very much. So just a brief introduction to the IRIS platform. Of course, I could go into a lot more technical detail, but time does not permit here today. So I just want to focus on the main bullet points. You won't be able to read all of the slides, but we will make it available to you after the presentation. It will be uploaded, I'm sure, Isabel will put it on the EU Comario website, and you should already have the fact sheet. Okay, thank you. So what is IRIS? IRIS stands for Indian Ocean Regional Information Sharing. We also had on the end before Incident Management Network, but we've shortened it a little. It's essentially a web-based communications platform with end-to-end encryption, and it can be used for information sharing, incident management, or collaboration at both the national and regional level. Originally, we designed it as a regional tool, but based on regional stakeholder feedback, we added the national functionality to the platform. It gives you the full ability to retain full control over your information. You decide who participates in a specific area, what information you share, and this is critical. If we're going to start building trust and confidence in information sharing between partners, you don't necessarily want to share that information with everybody at the same time, so you need to be able to retain control over your information. The project is funded by the European Union, but we designed the platform very much in a collaboration with the regional partners. We implement, obviously, by EU Comario. Our implementing authority, by the way, is Expertise France, so a quick nod to them. And the concept is built really based on our experience over the last 10 years working in the region. On a previous EU-funded project, MARSIC, we were implementing, along with the IMO, the information sharing centres under the Digital Code of Conduct. Primarily, of course, then it was piracy. But we took the lessons learned from that experience, and we put it into the development of this platform. And we take into consideration, of course, existing platforms already in the region. Okay, it's not working very well, this. We are mandated, the platform will become regionally owned by the end of 2019, so we are mandated to ensure that process is completed next year. So effectively, will become regionally owned, managed, located, meaning that the hosting will be foreseen in the region. The current ownership dialogue is ongoing with the Indian Ocean Commission, but the platform is managed by the two regional centres in Seychelles and Madagascar. The developing company, we work in a partnership with Polymorph in the UK, who are also experienced as the developers of the Mercury platform, and of course the oceanuslive.org, I believe, Glenn, as well. We obviously take into consideration the complementarity, so what we didn't want to do is duplicate existing functionalities, although there is some little bit overlap, but we think that was necessary to a certain degree. But we tried to identify the gaps with the existing systems when we were providing this communications tool for the region. So we're currently working very closely with MSCHOA with respect to the Mercury system. We already have a trial set up with the Sea Vision platform, and we will be discussing next year with the Fusion Centre in Madagascar in respect to interoperability potential between the two platforms. As I say, the trial now is currently in development. We anticipate that we will be able to activate that for the upcoming US Cutlass Express exercise, where we can export from a Sea Vision platform into the IRIS platform. So you can see here just a quick example. On here you can see the multiple area options that you can create, either regional centres, national centres. We will have a hub there, and also there's another one which is incidents. So you can have your static pages for your centres at national or regional level, or you can then create, if you want to, specific area for management of a specific incident, and you invite in whoever you want to participate in the management of that incident. We have the standard options to have messages and discussions, alerts, audible, visual alerts. We can put into the system formatted messages, and at the moment there's only one recognised one, which is the BMP5 format. So we've added that already, but as you agree as partners at national, regional level on the formatting or standardisation or SOPs, that can be incorporated into the platform. documents, upload, share documents, encryption. You can double encrypt if you want. If you want to have something in there that's sensitive, you can add another encryption overlay to that and send the encryption key via a different medium. We have a good mapping tool in there, which you can create markers, import and export CSV KML files, and also, as I say, we're looking to import common visual pictures from the CVision platform directly into the iris. You can see who's on there. Now, just because you have an area doesn't necessarily mean you'll see everybody on the platform. So we'll have a common area. So if you then want to collaborate with anybody in the region who will be amongst the iris community, you'll be able to see them and initiate a chat, or indeed, if you want, initiate a specific area for them. You can export a log. So if you have an incident where at the end you need to do maybe a legal finish on that, you can export the whole process of that incident specifically into a dedicated logs. And we may look to enhance that based on feedback in 2019. Currently the language available in the platform is English and French, but very soon we will be adding Arabic, Portuguese and Somali. We won't have any direct translation because we think maybe that's a little bit dangerous if the translation is not perfect during an incident. So we don't want to do that, but you can use Google tools for that sort of thing if you need to. And we're looking at adding voice over IP, which we've had a strong interest in from regional partners. So we may look to include that in the development next year. So who can access the platform? We're looking at basically to open this platform up to as many authorized users in the region as possible. So we're not limiting the scope to any specific organization. So we look, for example, the IOC will take ownership and management hopefully next year, but then we also foresee participation by the GPT Code of Conduct and other countries within the scope of the license agreement. No special system requirements. It's a web-based platform. All you need is an internet connection, PC, but of course we will be applying some specific user policies to ensure we have that security of the platform. It includes a full system accountability, so as a platform will be managed in one of the regional centres, there will be liaison officers with oversight, so we can set up auditing of the platform to ensure that it is being utilised as it should be. And that's essential again for building trust and confidence. And we apply a good level of security. The system will be subject to periodic penetration testing. It is fully encrypted. We have the two-factor authentication and, of course, static IP for regional centers. So, very much one of the key factors of developing a platform like this is long-term sustainability. So this was the major issue we had to address up front. So we have lifetime license, for example, for the platform within the scope of the geographical scope that we've got now, unlimited users. So there's no recurring license fee for users in the platform. We will fund it until end of March 2020, by which time, obviously, the regional ownership should take over. But currently, we're looking at approximate costs of up to €40,000 per year globally to maintain and run this platform. And I'm sure you will all agree that that is a very, very economic platform for the functionality that we're providing. We've got key exercise coming up at the end of January, so Iris will be used as a primary communications tool for Cutlass Express. So we're very busy at the moment making sure that all the participants have received the required training. We have trained the trainers already in Kenya, Madagascar, Seychelles and Mauritius, and we're looking to train the rest of these before Cutlass Express. It's an intense program, but we will achieve it. We had a meeting last week in MSCHOA, so we're also looking at 2019 to work and collaborate with MSCHOA and hold up to 6 CBX exercises. Of course, it's focused on piracy, and maybe the first one could be around March, because that's the transition period from maybe northward to Brest and Rota. And we're also looking at plan an implementation strategy next year with the regional partners. There will be a small working group that we're holding in Madagascar, We're just working on the details of that now. So that will be any decisions made on the platform going forward now will be in 100% collaboration with the requirements of the region. So we'll be looking to agree draft user and system policies. So anybody that wishes to apply to have an access to the platform will have the policies in place by the end of Catalyst Express. That's it for the presentation, but we've got a small video now, if you'll bear with us, which you're going to run. And I've got plenty of business cards here, so please come and see me after if you've got any questions. I'll be more than happy. Thank you.
C'est 7000 navires en transit par jour. 639 événements maritimes ont été recensés en 2017. Les États de la région ont besoin d'échanger des informations maritimes pour assurer une gestion des risques et des incidents maritimes dans la zone. C'est pourquoi il est nécessaire de disposer d'une plateforme telle que IORIS pour permettre à la région d'assurer la sécurité cet échange d'informations dans le cadre de la gestion d'événements maritimes.
Regards to development in the maritime security, it has become a bit more complex, and with the setting up of the two centers, RCOC in Seychelles and RMIFC in Madagascar, it is of importance we have a platform for exchange of information as well as operation that has been assigned to the two centers.
Voilà, nous avons un client qui s'appelle Talaboujan. On va l'insérer dans la plateforme IORIS pour qu'on puisse le suivre.
IORIS is one of the tools that has been on a trial and testing platform, whereby we can exchange information on a real-time basis, as well as to regional centers, as well as national centers. And it's a web-based platform with secure information, and it can as well be equipped on board any vessels, be it at sea or on planes, to interdict and assist in any operations and exchange of information.
We'll get an alert of a suspected vessel from Madagascar.
Okay. Plot an incident area and pull in a secret form and get me some information on the vessels, put it on the big screen.
The area is created and a secret form as well as created.
Pull up the secret form. Plot some filter markers on the 48-hour period and give me the estimated positions and direction of the vessel.
Okay. For the time filter, there is 3 locations where the ship can be heading. Once towards Seychelles water, one to the Mauritius water, and once further to La Réunion. And what next we have to do?
Okay. As per the information, we will send a report with the attachment to the Mauritian authorities and see if they have any vessels within that vicinity, and they can monitor that vessels and its activities.
IRIS provides our regional partners with essential tools to collaborate in a secure environment. So with the first operational version now available, EU Comario is delivering a program of training that will utilize IRIS for information sharing and incident management, but in close synergy with our specialized analysis and visualization courses. We are confident that we will leave a legacy of a secure, cost-effective, sustainable, but above all, a regionally owned and regionally managed maritime information sharing and incident management system that can continue to be developed to meet future expectations and challenges. But we do not stop there. Over the next 6 months, we will continue to gather critical feedback from our partners, centres and operators as we further enhance IRIS with our developer Polymorph to meet our partners' needs with the objectives of delivering a Phase 2 evolution of the platform in 2019. And we look forward to our continued close working relationship with our regional partners. Thank you. I just want to add, if you want to access that video, it's available on YouTube. Type EU Gramario. There's a few videos on there. I forgot to mention that there's a duplicate version of the platform which we use purely for training purposes. Also, in the live environment of the platform, there's a low bandwidth version for maybe mobile users or vessels or aircraft or somewhere where the internet is not very good. So that's available as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Dave, for this presentation, for the video. I think we could really some sort of sneak preview that my next panelist is Ronnie Matatik, Deputy Director of the LCOC Seychelles. He's going to speak about the new regional maritime centers based in Madagascar and Seychelles, a new development for a better MDA in the Indian Ocean. Right.
Thank you, Bruno. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the side event. And I'm an operational guy. Therefore, I'm going to give you an operational perspective on the two centers, which has been conceived through graciously under the support of the EU funding. And one is based in Madagascar, as it has been highlighted, and one is based in Seychelles. We've seen different programs in the region, such as Ocean Shield, a NATO-led mission, but then came to an end. We've seen now the EU NAVFOR Operation Atalanta has been extended only for 1 year, so therefore we don't know what's going to be beyond the next year, and we've seen a few other programs. Therefore, the EU, through the MAZE program, decided how can we, the region, take the ownership of the operations and informations of different missions that is affecting the Indian Oceans. And we all know that the Western Indian Ocean is amongst one of the most important ocean in the world, whereby there's, as it has been highlighted by Book, there's over 5,000 vessels that transit a month through the Western Indian Ocean. But those are the vessels which we having the information on it. But what about over at least 200,000 vessels which is not emitting any information or systems that we can track them? And therefore, through, as it has been highlighted by the panelists before me, crimes transcends borders. Therefore, we needed to have information exchange on what is going on, as well as having a comprehensive approach on the maritime domain awareness. Therefore, on the information exchange, the EU decided to set up the Information Exchange Center, which is based in Madagascar. And this center will treat only information. We don't want to call it intelligence. We know in the security sectors when you mention the word intelligence, then people frown upon. Therefore, we ensure that it is the information centers whereby there's different acquisitions of informations. It can be through exchange of MSCHOA, through national centers, through operational centers that have been established around the world. And both centers will have the liaison officers, which will be based in those centers. And last night, Kenya, the defense minister, signed the agreement. Therefore, Kenya as well is part of that program, and as well as France, which the ambassador signed last night. And so far, so that comes to 7 countries within that regions that have signed that. That is Seychelles, Madagascar, Mauritius, Réunion of France as an island, Comoros, as well as Djibouti. And now we have Kenya on board. Remaining to sign this agreement, we have Mozambique, Tanzania, South Africa, and Somali. But it has been highlighted, we know the importance of the regions. And therefore, probably between mid-December, we'll be having one representative of each of those countries that has signed the agreement in both centers. That is the one in Seychelles and the one in Madagascar. And the one in Madagascar, we treat those informations through acquisitions of satellite imagery, which is now under the support of the Satellite Imagery EU Copernicus, and then other satellite imagery firms, whereby these informations can be analyzed and then disseminated. So this information, when it's been analyzed, it's disseminated to the Seychelles centers. And the mandate of the Seychelles centers, it was decided by the EU because Seychelles has the most leading legislations in place in terms of enforcement, in terms of legal practices, and Seychelles had been the pioneer in terms of maritime security. And we've have been on the forefront for interdictions and operations, especially during the scourge of piracy, and as well through the counter narcotics, which affects these regions, whereby leaving off the Macron coast, transiting to the Eastern Africa. And once this information has been received by from other, can be open sources, can be closed sources, the operation center in Seychelles analyze again these informations and ensure the authenticity and validity of these informations, and then they coordinate and plan the missions. Both centers has an area of interest of 28 million square kilometers. That is a lot. But the operational area is around 16 million square kilometers. And as we know, the EU NAVFOR mandate is limited only to piracy. But both centers have escalated that beyond that, as per the Djibouti-Jeddah Amendment. Therefore, we have mandated operations from maritime tourism, IUUs, counter-narcotics, human smugglings, marine pollutions can be deliberate as well as incidental. And as it has been highlighted by our speaker, the effect of maritime pollutions that had during the incident off the coast in UK. And therefore, we know there's a lot of transits of traffics within that regions, and especially within the islands that have archipelagic states, and by law, all those vessels can transit in. And what if there's a potential risk of an incident, especially? There's a lot of effect. And we know the Western Indian Ocean has the most reserves of natural protein, which is fisheries. And this can pose a serious effect, not only for the regions, as well on the global market itself. And other problems that is affecting the regions is wildlife crimes, poaching, wood, timbers, and so forth. And all these mandated operations, once this information has been analyzed and validated, the center in Seychelles plan the missions and then execute the missions. But we know there is a problem within that region not all the countries have assets, be it surface assets or aircraft. Therefore, what how we've done is we've gone through the whole regions, and those countries have allocated and they've put down on the paper what type of assets they have in case if there is emissions. So how do we go? Those assets are not pledged assets. They stay within the jurisdictions of the national authority. But depending on the area of operations, let's say we have a search and rescue off the coast of Zanzibar. Therefore, the mission of the center, once it has planned and coordinated the missions, that liaison officers, let's say, in closest to that area of operations, let's say from Kenyan authority, that liaison officer within that operation center, they liaise directly with that Kenyan authority. And then through the utilizations of the asset, then the Kenyan authority gives a go-ahead, and then we just plan the mission, and the tactical command remains to the national authority. And through the support of the EU funding, and we know there's a lot of issues in terms of fundings within the regions. Not all have the financial capabilities. Therefore, the EU has put some allocations of almost 4 million euros at the disposal, which is through that operational center. Therefore, we can assist that national authority in terms of fueling their assets, in terms of logistical support, so that we can facilitate them for the interdictions and the successful operations of that missions. But we have to ensure that all those missions are within the norms of internationals, nationals, and local laws. Therefore, all those missions mandated by the two centers will be within the norms of the laws. And we have to understand, as it has been highlighted by Glenn earlier, these both centers, their missions is not military-led. It's an interoperability missions, a joint operations and a joint effort, be it with the naval asset, Coast Guard effort, be it with the police, immigrations, and maybe revenue commissions, a lot of multitudes of partners itself. And last but not the least, as we know through the maritime crimes, there's a lot of evolutions, and both centers will need to do some situational analysis, some needs analysis, and how to develop future plans in terms of capability development and assist some of the regions or states which have lesser capabilities. We will put at the disposal through Isabel some of the slides for both centers where you can get perceptions and an overview of the two centers, where it's located, how it is manned, and what it envisaged to do. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and I'll be at your disposal in case you want to ask certain questions about those two centers. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ronnie. And if you don't mind me now, cross again through the continent and go back to the Gulf of Guinea for our last speakers, Thomas Tarad, who's the Gogin expert at inside the Crestmac, and he will speak about the Gogin and the enhancement of maritime domain awareness in the Gulf of Guinea.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to discover that I have 15 minutes for my presentation. So I'm going to reduce it, and if you can go directly to number 8, because the main idea were developed by the other speakers, so maybe we can skip. Yeah, this one. So the idea here is to show you the MDA challenge which we cover a lot of fields. You can see, even if it's difficult to read on the screen, but you can see all the fields: the search and rescue, assistance to vessels, plundering of resources, trafficking, pollution, piracy. So it's a huge work to do. And the next one, so the screen's not so clear, but it's maybe a little bit difficult, but it's very simple to see. this presentation, and it shows the complexity of MDA challenge because of the numbers of actors involved and sometimes from different countries. So the number of actors required to appoint an administration leading and other administration to cooperate and at least very efficient information sharing. The next one. So it's a huge challenge to organize, collect, and analysis maritime data. And there are a lot of tools to do it. So again, it's a very huge challenge. But it's a price to have to improve maritime safety and security. The next slide is only to show you what Sylvain Tonfac told you about the specific architecture in the Gulf of Guinea. So you can see different level, national level, multinational, regional, and strategic interregional level. The two other levels, it's between operational and strategic. And the next one is a map of all the centers, so from Senegal to Angola, with some centers, MCCs, multinational centers, regional centers, and ICC in Yaoundé. So, what is the role of Gogin in this context? And the story started with a Quingo project in 2013. It was a 4.5 project supported by DEFCO and implemented by Expertise France, with a geographical scope mainly focused on the countries in zone D and A. So in the Yaoundé architecture, it goes from Togo to Gabon and also includes Ivory Coast and Ghana due to the presence of two universities, maritime universities. So in addition to the establishment of general maritime safety and security academic training for executives and also for operators, which continue today with Gogin, Quingo has also produced training for operational centers, national and multinational centers. The project also focused on supporting the rise of interregional coordination center in Yaoundé from its birth with a permanent expert. Finally, Quingo has laid the foundation for a first information sharing system. It was called ELOG, which is still working today. The story continues now with Gogin. It's a new project, but in the continuity of Quingo. It's a 9.3 million euros project implemented by Expertise France, and his ambition is to have a larger scope than Quingo. The first 2 years were dedicated to the same countries of Quingo in zone D and E, and the last 2 years, so from now to the end of the project in 2019, will be enlarged to the 19 countries of the Gulf of Guinea. Next one. No, back. I accept to reduce, but if it's possible to show 1 or 2 slides. So the next one, please. Yeah, this slide is to illustrate the new Gogin, the new design of the project, because from the beginning to now we made some changes. So we have 5 pillars on which Gogin will be focused. So I don't know if you can read it, but I'm going to do it. So promote common maritime intersectoral dialogue and culture. So the main goal is to work with all the administration and to work with all the countries. Promote knowledge and exploitation of maritime situation. The third one is to promote maritime space control skills. And the fourth one is to promote maritime space control. And the last one is to promote pooling and harmonization of maritime. So with the need for interoperability due to financial constraints. And on the right part of this slide, you can see the new activities and the activities we can propose to the countries and to the centers. Training, academic courses, exercises, and the development of a tool to information sharing. Sorry. And the last thing I would like to tell you is that we are going to make some national assessments in order to be able to answer, to give a better answer to the needs of the different countries and different centers. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and thanks again for being fast and short in your presentation, which was concluding our panel indeed. I don't know, we still have the room for a few minutes, do we? So I guess yes, we do. So we could take a few questions from the floor, if there are any. Yes, I see one, two. There's microphones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Regina Folonsho from Nigeria. We all know how important we have to forge ahead towards a workable, sustainable blue economy in our countries. My question is this: what percentage of a nation's GDP should be directed to maritime security? It's to all the members of the panel.
Maybe we'll take this question first. So the question is about what percentage of our GDP or of the state budget basically should be devoted to maritime security. I'm not an expert, but what I've heard is that there's a lot of difference and a lot of variable concept of maritime security depending on what we consider the region we are located in. But I don't know if anyone has got a...
I confess, I have no clear idea because maritime security is a global concept and reaching a lot of domain. This is not only considering, for example, the Minister of Defense and the means that this minister could devote it to survey of the maritime domain through its navy, but many other Ministry of Transport and many other maritime administration. So it's something which is taking part of the budget of this administration, and I confess I do not have a very clear idea. But as far as we are considering the importance, the growing importance of maritime, of the blue economy, I think there is a kind of wake-up call for many governments to increase their capability and the means that they can devote it to the protection of their maritime resource. So it could not only imply, sovereign government. When I say that, I mean not only Ministry of Defense, for example, but I'm thinking about the field of research and just research, education, innovation. So you can see that there is a broad range of potentiality of getting from this sector, this service, money to be finally devoted to maritime security.
Thank you. Thank you to all the panelists. Good afternoon to all of you. My name is Michele Stallone. I've got a question for the panelists from MSCHOA. How to build the same level of trust between the international shipping community and these emerging information reporting centers operating in the Indian Ocean region? Thank you.
Thanks, Michele. I think that's a very simple question with a very difficult answer. It's relationships and it's trust and it's, as I mentioned, response. We have been fortunate to have been located in Northwood for the last 10 years, which is close to where maritime industry has their headquarters, where insurance companies have their headquarters. There have been many conversations in the beginning, and I was just talking to Glenn at the beginning, and maybe Glenn might actually be able to chip in on this one, because he was involved in setting it up. There were many conversations about what kind of information do we want, and do we trust a military entity with that, and how is it going to be used? It is through proving your worth, through proving that you have the information, that you can fuse it, as others have mentioned, that you can pull in intelligence sources from military partners and create a report that helps them, that you immediately show the value of what you do. That is a trust relationship, and that is something that the regional centers here will need to be working on, will need to be collaborating with those companies, with the shipping industry. We will have the same challenge ourselves. As someone already mentioned, Dave mentioned it, we will be moving to, our operational headquarters will move to Rota in Spain next year, and our Maritime Security Center will move to Brest in France. We will have the same challenge. We will have to prove again that we are still relevant and that we can still provide them with the same level of quality products.
I agree with Bork that it really is down to if you have a mission that you know has to be achieved in a short space of time, you really have to drive the effort to liaise with as many civil and military authorities as you can, and bring them together to make sure that it's not about the individual or entity. It is about protecting the ocean where they, as they are doing now with blue economy. If you cannot do that, then you are doomed to fail in any effort you make at all. You have to make sure that the partnerships start as early as possible, and then you then can build the trust relationship. Because if you look at MSC HOA and the fight against piracy, began in 2008. It took a number of years before they saw real results in driving down piracy. And since 2012, although piracy has not disappeared, and it's still there, but we know that there's a partnership in place that can turn around and say, we can do this once again and drive it back. So it really is, trust is slow to be built, but when it's in place, it lasts for a long time.
Hi, my name is Abi Mumbai. I am a journalist from Senegal, the Senegalese National Broadcasting, in a French native country. My question is about maritime incident which happened in my country, Senegal and Mauritania. Sometimes some fishers have a problem. Some fishers are captured, their material destroyed. Sometimes they are killed. What kind of collaboration we may have to stop this maritime misunderstanding or this kind of crisis between the two countries? Another point is I noticed that Senegal and Mauritania can share their effort to explore the gas discovered at the sea, but they don't share analytics results here. My question is gas discovered in the sea more important than the fish or the security of the population? Thank you.
I'll just try to answer to the first part of your question. Because you know that in the past, Mauritania was part of ECOWAS community, and then he get out. But I think the solution will come through political action, because Morocco is in a good process to join ECOWAS Commission, and Mauritania is between Senegal, which is the last state north of ECOWAS, and Morocco. And once Morocco will join the ECOWAS Commission, I am absolutely sure that Mauritania will come back to the Commission, and he will immediately join the common architecture of maritime safety for the West Africa, which is linked to the architecture of Central Africa. And in this architecture, you have all solution to the incidental or incident which come after fishery action. Because now the problem is that Mauritania is out of the community and Senegal is inside the community. And there is no specific agreement for the Senegalese fishermen to work in the Mauritanian water. Every state, any state has its own politics. It will depend. What is the state, the coastal state, need to prioritize what is most important for them or not. And in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, states are in need of funding. So for me, if Senegal and Mauritania can deal to exploitation, common exploitation of gas, maybe it will be consequence on the common exploitation of fishery.
I'm Donat Bagula, PS for Transport DRC. Is any advice can you give us to know how we can share, broaden the information center which was built under Defense Department? And now we need to see how we can share this information across the board with other organizations dealing with maritime security. Is it possible to see how it can be fast-tracked to help other organizations to share those information easily? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I'll bring an insight and then Dave will take up. Through the setup of the two centers within the Indian Ocean, now we've seen that even now in the Pacific, we've had some visits of representatives from the Pacific because they want to replicate the same achievement that we have achieved within the Indian Ocean regions, and therefore all those know-hows and lessons learned, it's free. And we willing to, we have our contact details. We willing to exchange informations and emails and see how we can impart our processes so that you can build upon as well.
Sorry, sir. Can I just clarify which country did you say? Okay, DRC. DRC are not currently in the scope of the Irish licensing. But what we're trying to do is give them access at some level to countries outside of that. For example, maybe through the African Union, the East African Standby Force, so we can achieve access under the current license agreement, where you be able to access the regional centres in the Indian Ocean. I think that will be certainly beneficial to you to be able to access the fusion centre in Madagascar and the operational centre in Seychelles. But at the moment, I think only through those two organisations. But in the future, once it becomes regionally owned, then it's up to the region to expand the license agreement with any country that they want, Southeast Asia or anywhere globally.
Thank you very much. My name is John Nyabo. I work with Kenya Ports Authority. My question is simple. I throw it to the panel. The coming with the blue economy here in Kenya
actually is a blessing, and it's a big thing, it's an in thing now. And I understand every country globally tend to enhance or integrating the youth in any event. And the economy of any country, if they can take opportunity of integrating the youth in the events, I'm very much sure that in future they can have good settings. My question is, what are the steps, especially the EU, Primario, and other organizations, taking to integrate the blue economy knowledge and even the EU Primario in our educational system? Because we have fresh youth coming out in universities, from colleges and secondary schools. But you find that the awareness is very low. They don't know. And they are having passion for the same. So how can you help? Maybe you can expedite these policies with partner countries.
I don't know really to answer to this question, because the blue economy is really, as you mentioned, a very new concept, and we need to accommodate it in our thinking. Of course, we are able to see that what we are doing through Primario contribute to the blue economy as it enforces maritime security. But when it came to educational aspect, of course, we are organizing training. So so through this channel, I think we can, of course, expand our thinking of the blue economy and insist of the importance. But I'm afraid it is all we can do.
If I may, just as it's a question on Kenya, and I'm from the EU delegation in Kenya. The Go Blue program that we're developing as a follow-up of the Blue Economy Conference, and which will assist Kenya in developing its blue economy, as an important pillar on youth. And the idea is to create, as you said, there's awareness for the youth, but also to create more opportunities. As the blue economy develops, the youth should find more jobs, more training, to integrate fully in this blue economy, and especially on the coastal areas which have been somehow disadvantaged in the economic development of Kenya, and have limited themselves to tourism more than other things in the blue economy. So definitely that's something that the EU is looking at together with the government, to develop education and curricula that will lead the youth into jobs that are created by the blue economy.
Okay, thank you. I am Navy Captain Belbel from Interregional Coordination Center in Yaoundé. I'm in charge of information sharing and communication. So, but I have lost my English, so I will speak in French. Voilà, je vous remercie pour toutes les présentations qui ont été faites. Concernant le MDA, quand je regarde ce qui se passe dans l'océan Indien, je me dis actuellement que est-ce que dans le golfe de Guinée, Gogogin est suffisant? J'ai la faiblesse de croire que peut-être non. Parce que quand je vois le soutien apporté aux pays et au centre de l'océan Indien, je me dis que ce qui se passe dans le golfe de Guinée n'est pas suffisant et qu'il faut faire plus. Si je sais que l'Union européenne a un projet comme SWEMS et comme PRASMA en Afrique de l'Ouest et en Afrique centrale, il y a Gogogin. Actuellement, le centre ou la cellule de fusion de l'information maritime du golfe de Guinée est plutôt à Brest. Nous avons entamé peut-être des discussions préliminaires pour voir comment ce centre, cette cellule de fusion peut revenir dans le golfe de Guinée. Si ces discussions n'aboutissent pas, est-ce qu'il n'est pas préférable au niveau du golfe de Guinée d'avoir un centre de fusion de l'information maritime en parvenant à remplir les critères du triangle qui est donc le socle et la confiance. Je vous remercie.
Thank you for your question. In fact, I was obliged to reduce my presentation, but to be comprehensive, it was necessary to mention that two other projects will come very soon. The first one is in the ECOWAS region, it's called SWAMS, and the other one will be attached to ECAS, and the name is PASMAR. So for SWAMS, I'm sure they will start in the next few weeks, months, maybe weeks, and with two main components. One is dedicated to equipment, and another one to legal aspects with collaboration with UNODC. And for PASMA, it will be almost the same. So there will be in the next few months three European Union projects in the Gulf of Guinea.
Excellent. One last question. Sorry, I think we'll have to just take one last.
Thank you. I'm very thankful for having this kind of presentation, which is which regards to the sustainable maritime security in line with the blue economy. In order to perfect the blue economy in this area, it means we need a big number of ships to call into our ports. And as we speak, we are all witness that before the last 10 years, we had a very high rate of piracy in the Western Indian Ocean. And as we speak, that rate has declined a lot. And by doing that, by the decline of the piracy or terrorism in that area, it means now that we are looking forward to see if we can have kind of mechanism to have a number of ships to sail through the area which is earmarked as the high-risk area. This area was earmarked those days because of the rate of piracy. But as we speak, the piracy is still there. It's not gone completely, but it has declined a lot. So for the vessels to come into our port, to come into Mombasa port, to go into South Africa port, it means the premium is still high because of that high-risk area. So can we use this platform to see if we can, we can compromise with the best practice, best management practice 5, to see if at all they can think of lifting or considering that area which is high risk, to be useful to the all ships which are coming or going out of the all ports which are alongside the Indian Ocean. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and a very good question. And similar to your colleague sitting in front of you asked, sea blindness is a very real problem, and for people to understand and see the risk that's in their region. Best management practice has been the solution to piracy off the coast of Somalia, along with some military help from Atalanta. The shipping industry is responsible for best management practice and are in the process of reviewing BMP5 at the moment, and I think you can expect to see a reduction in the high risk area sometime soon. But just keep in mind, this is the shipping industry's responsibility, but you as a country should be putting pressure on the shipping industry generally as one of the biggest ports in the region, and you need to apply pressure to the shipping companies who deliver goods into your ports. But just keep in mind, BMP has been the answer and the response and the thing that has stopped piracy in this region. And as somebody else said just now, piracy hasn't gone away. We've had a number of attacks off the coast of Somalia this year. Luckily, they haven't succeeded because BMP has the measures that are required under BMP has prevented the Somali pirates getting on board these ships. So BMP is still very important, but an assessment of the high-risk area is very important for the economies of this region, and I think that's understood by everybody. And also it's a key element of the insurance for the shipping industry. And when you're sailing in the high risk area, of course, insurance is extremely high, and that makes the cost of your goods and services extremely high. So it's in the interest of everybody to make sure that BMP is realistic, but just keep in mind too that the threat hasn't gone away.
And not forgetting that Egypt and Saudi also put pressure on reducing the high-risk area from the Red Sea. So the amount of money that ships are paying to into the Red Sea was also reduced. So that may be something to look at.
Thanks a lot. I said I wouldn't take any more questions, but I wouldn't be gender balanced if I do so. So I've got one last question that we will take.
Thank you very much. I'll help to balance also that side. And my first comment is that there's a need to look into the women in the blue economy and also in overall. That would help because I know she needs company. As I give that, I give a comment first and then an area with a request for clarification. So my name is Wangari Kabiru and I'm from Kenya. I serve as a mediator in Kenya. So I have a major interest in the area that the blue economy will now lead us into how we can resolve the disputes that arise between nations, the disputes that come as a result of the major attention that's coming now to communities that normally have been marginalized, especially around the coastal communities. The experience has been marginalization. So now we are going to have a lot of attention going into the communities, and we may now end up having situations whereby the same communities are actually the ones who are, part of, let's say, the insecurity of the same waters that we are giving attention to. So probably there's some good practice somewhere or some recommendations on how best to handle this. I come from an alternative dispute resolution angle because otherwise we will end up then taking especially a lot of the young people from our coastal communities into our courts because, they are looking for a way to make money, or if it's a fisherman, they are looking for how to make money for their families, or if it's mothers. They're also looking for normally very basic things. So how we ensure that we also take care of the dispute resolution strategy. Thank you very much.
Maybe I'll try to answer from the Kenyan perspective, and maybe colleagues will add if there's anything to add. But I think the strategy of the European Union, together with the government, is to work after the Bloom Economic Conference in developing those coastal areas that have, as you said, been marginalized or left away from the economic development Kenya has known in the last 20 years. We're working on this, especially with the devolved entities, the counties, which are closer to the youth and knowing what the youth in these counties want and how they can interact in a peaceful way. As you say, there'll be competition. It's quite normal because the opportunities for employment or for future are scarce at the moment, and they will continue to be scarce as we develop them. And we need to find a way for this youth to enter into this new pillar of the economy that is being developed, while at the same time seeing it as a positive opportunity and not as a competition. So devolved entities will be at the center of the action that we want to pursue, and we are also pushing these devolved counties basically to speak to each other. And you might have heard about the creation of the Coastal Economic Bloc, which the government is also fostering and which we are also promoting. It's a way to identify common areas in these coastal counties where by pulling together, the counties will be stronger and better and will offer better opportunities. Are there specific mechanisms to avoid conflicts between the coastal communities? Not yet, I would say, as we learn walking as we're talking, basically, as well. And but it's definitely an angle that we are considering to make sure that the somehow marginalization that has existed until now is fought against, and that we find positive solution for all of them.
Can I just give another example? Sadly, it's not a Kenyan example, although I'm sure you know that conflict amongst the fishing communities on Lake Victoria is quite a problem, and therefore education and protection of fishing stocks and so on tend to bring fishing communities into conflict. In Somalia, there's been quite an effort to try and counter the piracy problem by supporting the coastal communities, and FAO and IGAD and a program called Shirako have been helping the local fishing communities with microfinance to help the communities and give jobs to these young men who might otherwise fall foul of pirates, or even, and this applies to Kenya, radicalization by Al-Shabaab, by taking people away from the fishing communities. But the women's groups are quite strong in some of these cooperatives that we've been involved with in Somalia, and we found that engagement with women's groups and microfinancing with women's groups has been extremely effective. It's nowhere near enough, but it is a small start, and you know, it would seem to have really good application in Kenya, not just on the coast, but on Lake Victoria as well.
A lot, and I think with this answer, we've now finished our side event, our panel. I want to, I don't know if I'm concluding or if you want to, I'll do so. I want to thank everyone for attending. Thanks to the panelists for sharing their experience in this domain of maritime security. I think we took about nearly 2 hours at the end, which is not enough to cover maritime security. We could have spoken for 2 or 3 days, but that's what conferences like this ones are about. It's about bringing information, bringing experience, sharing it, and then probably building it further while you will take contact with the panelists and with others who have spoken during the conference. So thanks a lot, and I wish you a good day further. I think it has been a very positive engagement.